Welcome in, everybody, to the Modern Missionary Podcast presented by Odeon. I am super excited to start this back up. I do need to apologize up front. We had a little bit of a hiatus. Things got a little crazy last year. So I actually am really pleased to announce that we have a new co-host that's going to be helping us out. And he's actually going to be my co-host today and our guest today that's going to be talking about his experience on his mission. So just want to welcome in Taylor Rice. So Taylor is our marketing director at Odeon Menswear, and he is going to be helping me with the co-hosting of this podcast. He has quite a bit of experience. I'm actually going to turn it over to him for a second, maybe give some of his experience with either podcast, video. He's been doing a lot of cool things and what he's excited about with the podcast going forward.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm super excited about this because I think it could just be a great opportunity to build a community of, missionaries who have served, who are going to serve, whatever. And then as well through Odeon, just make a great community that everybody can trust and rely on for good information, whether it's about the clothes or whether it's about missions. It's an unknown process for a lot of people going out. And so if we can provide some insights on our experiences, it'll make it that much easier. So, because it's a tough start out there.
Yeah, it is. And maybe give us a little bit of your background of what you've done in the video world before. And I know you have some experience there, and I'd love you to share some of that.
Yeah, I love content creation. I've been dabbling in it for the past couple of years. I started my own YouTube, Rice T18 on YouTube. It's just all sports. So if you're a big sports guy like myself, go check it out. I've had a little hiatus over there myself, so we're trying to get back into it just like we are here. Then I'm always looking for a podcast to be on and more avenues. I love doing like the social media for Odeon and everything else. So always trying to do some kind of content creation and get myself out there.
Awesome. Well, honestly, just want to let all the listeners know, I am super pumped to have Taylor. He has a ton of experience. I loved his YouTube channel. He started working with us originally just kind of as a side gig while he was doing his YouTube stuff, and then jumped in more and more with Odeon just because I loved how much what he was doing and what we could do in the future. So I'm really pumped to have him as part of the team from the Odeon side, but also for the Modern Missionary Podcast and what we can do here as a co-host. So sometimes you're going to have us both co-hosting with maybe a guest. Sometimes it might just be me with another guest. It might be Taylor with another guest. So we'll kind of have to feel that out of how it's happening, but that's kind of what we're going through going forward. But today I'm going to be the one asking the questions. We'll let Taylor do the answering this time, and then he can kind of go forward with that when he has his own guests on. So Taylor, let's jump into it. Let's talk about your mission. When would you say was the first inkling or first desire you had to serve a mission?
Oh, first desire. I grew up in the church. I grew up in Michigan, so it wasn't the same experience as a lot of Utah. But it was always one of those things that seemed really cool, to me to get out, go somewhere new. My dad served a mission, and he went to South Africa, which I just thought was super cool. I wanted to go, just to go experience the world, something like that, and actually live there for 2 years. I thought that'd be really cool, just as an experience. Then plus, I was all, since primary days, talking about scripture power and whatever, I was always excited to share the gospel. So from the beginning, I guess.
Awesome. So yeah, we've had kind of, I was actually expecting most of our guests that we've had on so far, which a lot of them have been Odeon employees, to be kind of like you or like me, where it was like, you kind of just grew up, I hope they call me on a mission type of thing. And we've had some of the whole, array of different times. Some people didn't even want to serve until the year before, but it is fun to listen to somebody who's maybe been a little more like my experience, and then listen to kind of some of the challenges that came, even though you kind of wanted to your whole life. So maybe let's talk about, so first of all, you talked about growing up in Michigan. How long did you live in Michigan, and what was that experience like growing up out in the church outside of Utah? Because for a Utah boy like me, and a lot of maybe our listeners are going to be Utah based, what is it like?
Yeah, it's different. It's different for sure. Honestly, I'm still partial to it. I loved being in Michigan. So I was there I was born in Utah, actually. I was born in Provo. I lived in Salem, where I grew up most of my life, actually. But I moved to Michigan when I was 3.
Okay.
And then I was there until I was 9. So a good 6 years there. Yeah, and I did the whole thing growing up in a branch. So not very many people at all. Yep. I was the only member in my school. My brothers were the only people in the city that were also going to school and members. We had a couple in the town over, but that was,
Yeah.
I mean, the branch was spread out. Like it was a couple hours wide, and we still only got 40 people at church on Sunday.
That's what I was going to ask is how far did you guys have to drive to get to church every Sunday?
We were lucky. It was like a 10, 15-minute drive for us.
Okay.
But
There
we
were
had
some that
some
had to
people that
travel.
were hour and a half.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. That's really cool. And you talked about brothers. What is, just because I think that kind of shape how your mission experience goes. How many siblings do you have? Are you the oldest, youngest?
So I'm in the middle. I have an older half brother, and then I've got 2 younger brothers.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess we'll just go there.
So did your half brother end up serving a mission?
He did.
Okay.
He went to Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
But and that is definitely something that we should get into, because my brother, he served, did his thing, and then he came back and left the church pretty quickly after his mission. So that was a big influence on me.
Yeah, let's actually let's table that one for just really what I do want to get back into that, because I think that's a really good thing. But I do want to talk about, like, okay, we talked about you wanted to since you were just a little kid, you were in primary, that was something you were interested in anyway. Let's talk now, like you're 15, 16, and maybe this is what your brother's experience goes into that. But what did you actually do to prepare for your mission, and what was your experience right before serving and your actual decision to like serve? Like, when did you decide, okay, besides just like my desire, this is when I'm actually going to go and I'm going to start making that the preparations there?
Yeah, and I think this is where I get very common with the rest of your podcast guests, I'm assuming, because it was about a year. I didn't do anything. I mean, I went to church. I did okay. But again, I wasn't the most active, like, listener, I guess. But it was about a year, probably late in my junior year, early senior year. I mean, I wasn't being the best a kid. And then I decided, and then, yeah, I've had this influence of my brother, who was now, I mean, he did not like his mission. He was not a fan of it. And then and with other things, ended up leading him away from the church. So that was something on my mind. My best friend growing up, who also works with us, was never, I mean, he wasn't really an active member at the time. He was confused by the whole give it up 2 years thing. And so I definitely had influences both ways. And so it really made me think, like, man, I felt pretty good about this, but I gotta really get down to it. I really gotta decide. And so with about a year, I decided that I have to know whether the church was true or not, and I've had a testimony, since I was young, um, younger than most, just because one of my younger brothers actually passed away when we were super young. He was only 3, I was 6. And so, but I got a deep testimony of the plan of salvation since one of those days, shortly after. So I've always had a testimony, but I wasn't sure about everything, especially I don't know how deep you want me to get, but I mean, I had a trouble with the restoration for a little bit. And so then I just decided to hop into the Book of Mormon. I was like, man, I can't go teach it unless I know it. And so I have to read this book at least once all the way through. And I read the introduction where it says at the very end, and I love this part, and I always brought it up on my mission, is like, hey, just give it a test. Just try it. Like, we are daring you to try it. So that's what I did. And I don't think I got halfway through the Book of Mormon before I knew that it was like, man, what are you doing? Why are you trying to get out of this? Like, you already know. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you're willing to share kind of some of the struggles that were there, and that there were difficulties of trying to make that decision, and it's something that I honestly didn't experience, and I think I was kind of on the rare side of it, now that I'm learning how many people actually did have to get to that point where they had to like make that big decision and recognize how hard it was. I actually had that experience while I was out. So like I thought I had a perfect testimony when I was going out, and even honestly towards the end of my mission is when I had somebody come up to me. I was in Mexico, and I have this guy come up to me, and he speaks to me, and he's like, "Hey, elders, what's going on?" And like, not in Spanish, he said that in English, and I was like, what's up? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm from Utah. Like, come on in. Like, let's come to my house. And we got in there. He locks the doors and he just starts just bashing us like crazy. He was a former member and he was just going crazy. And honestly, I hadn't had any questions. I'd always kind of believed, like I always knew, and I still felt like it was all true. But then he started bashing, and my questions. That's when my quote unquote faith crisis really started. Originally, is like, well, I was already out there. So hearing some of this happen about pre-mission is something that is really cool that you're willing to share, but also that you had influences pulling you both ways. I'm sure you had people around you, maybe your parents, maybe bishops. Those people really were in your corner helping you decide to go, but also you had some influences like best friends, brother that was a former member, things like that. And the fact that you had to dig, and I love that you did what you did to dig, to decide that was what you wanted to do. Because like honestly, just going for the sake of going isn't going to help you or anybody else, honestly. And getting that testimony and digging. And I do want to make a little caveat here. So I know we present this podcast is presented by Odeon Menswear, and one of the things you talked about is the end of the Book of Mormon gives a challenge. It's like, hey, just try this out. Like we believe in it so much that you should just come and try it out. And honestly, I'm going to talk about the free missionary gift. I know if this is sacrilegious, all you listeners, I'm not trying to get that way, but I just want to talk about, like, that is one of the reasons why we give our free missionary gift, which is a free shirt and a free pair of socks. We want people to try it. Like, we believe in it enough that we say like we dare you to come try it because we know you're going to love it. And I know I'm probably taking a stretch here with the comparing it to the Book of Mormon, because it's not the Book of Mormon, but that is the same challenge, and that is why we do the free gift. So like, come, if you're preparing for a mission, come give us a try. Come try our stuff out, and then we know you're going to like it. We'll know you'll come back. So let's jump back into the spiritual side again. So you made that decision, Taylor. You decided, hey, this is what I'm going to do. You got that. What did when did you get your call? What was your reaction to the call? All of those different things.
Yeah, so it actually was a while for me to get my call, just because I was filling out the papers right before COVID hit, and then something happened with COVID, and my papers got sent to I don't even remember what they're called, like church family services or whatever. They got flagged for some reason, and they were super slow during COVID. And so it took me a few months to get my call. So that was one that kind of like discouraged me a little bit too. But the day came, my call came, and I was super nervous, just like everybody else would. I wanted to go foreign Spanish speaking so bad. Like, I did all the Spanish throughout junior high and high school. My uncle is from Bolivia, so I thought that would be a super cool mission. And then I got my call, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The only thing going through my head is, I don't know, have you seen the movie 42, the Jackie Robinson story?
Yeah.
You know, when I can't remember the guy's name, but the pitcher who gets traded to Pittsburgh, and he's just like, Pittsburgh, of all places, Pittsburgh. That was me. I was there. Because the only thing I knew about Pittsburgh was I didn't like the Steelers and I didn't like the Pirates. Okay, I grew up Cardinals fans, so they beat my Arizona Cardinals in the Super Bowl. And then, of course, in baseball, my St. Louis Cardinals are in the same division. And so I've grown up hating Pittsburgh sports. And so I was really upset. And honestly, it was something that I struggled with, because I thought a mistake had to be made. Like, I don't know. I just was so confident that I was going Spanish speaking, but wasn't the case.
So you get your call, and you talked about COVID. I would like to kind of talk about this a little bit. Like, what was the timeline? Like, when did you actually get out? Like, when was the time you actually got on your mission?
I got out September of 2020.
Okay, so it was still in the depths of COVID was still going on. So when you actually got out there, were you actually proselyting or doing anything like that? Or
no, not for the first while. I was straight home MTC all 3 weeks. I was locked inside, didn't go to church for the first couple weeks of my mission, because every time we got somebody new in, you had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. So after that 2 weeks, then we could go to church, and we could go we still couldn't go outside. We couldn't go knock doors, couldn't meet with members, but we could at least go to church. So
and what was the work like? I know we've had a couple of guests last year that we were doing this that served during COVID, but what was it like for you? Were you on Facebook? Like, what were you doing during the times that you weren't actually out?
Yeah, Facebook. calling people. Um, so I was in a trio to start my mission. So I basically had two trainers, and it was honestly I loved it. I thought trios were a party. I I had trios later in my mission where we were knocking doors and teaching lessons, and it was very difficult. But at the beginning, it was a lot of fun because you always had to be with somebody in your small little apartment. So if there was one guy you weren't really feeling at the moment, you could go hang out with the other guy. So it worked out. But I had two really good trainers. One was all about scriptures, like he just knew the facts. Like he was just hard. He was strict. But the other guy was way more laid back, way more easygoing. Had a lot of fun, and he was a really good people person. So the other guy knew his stuff. The other guy knew people, and so it was a perfect combination for me to learn from. I knew how to be a great missionary because he was a district leader. He was a zone leader, and he got bumped down just to train me bumped down, whatever I don't know.
I know what you
But
mean.
yeah, he got bumped to DL just to train me, and then the other guy who was reassigned from New Zealand, but they were perfect for me, and we just went out, had a lot of fun on our outside times. We called a lot of people because the one Elder Thurgood, my trainer, who was the numbers guy and knew his stuff, he was all about being on the phones. And so that was really good for me because I actually liked being on the phones more. My favorite thing was going through the area book and just calling people who had previously been taught. Like that worked really well. But for the other guy, Elder Gatherum, he was really good at Facebook finding. Um, so I taught a lot of people from the Philippines and Nigeria for the first couple months because that's where he found people. But
Hmm.
then we eventually got it to our own area and it was a little bit better. But that's how it started.
That's cool. That's and obviously the COVID experience was different. How long did you kind of have those type of restrictions, and then when did you finally get back to the point where maybe what we'd say quote unquote normal missionary work?
Normal, probably a year in. Um, there was it like slowly lessened, but yeah, back to knocking doors was probably
About a year.
I had a little bit less than a year left.
Yeah. So maybe let's just talk about this. And I know that COVID's going to be a different experience. So maybe some of these you missionaries that are listening that are going out, hopefully we don't have another worldwide pandemic. But
Agreed.
um, just I would love to kind of hear, now that we've talked a little bit about your mission, what you expected your whole life your mission was going to be like, and even like read it before, and then what it was actually like that was different. And maybe talk about both the COVID things that were different, which is obviously we already kind of talked about those, but let's focus more on what things were different when it was actually quote unquote normal work, and what that was different from maybe what you originally expected your mission to be like, or what you envisioned it being like.
Sure. Yeah, growing up, um, I thought my mission was going to be exactly like my dad's. And obviously it ended up almost nothing like my dad's because my dad was in South Africa and it was just completely different. Um, it was back when they were memorizing lessons instead of having to preach my gospel, whatever. But yeah, that's what I envisioned is just you go out every day, you walk around, and you go get your food in the morning because I didn't have fridges, and then you go just hit the doors forever. Um, and that's I don't know, not what it ended up being for me because I thought it was just every day going to be the same kind of repetitious thing of hitting the doors, talking to as many people as you can, teaching as many lessons as you can, and then just that kind of third world country life as well. But I mean, obviously with COVID, it was a lot of indoors for a long time, a lot of just phone lessons, a lot of Zoom lessons. And that was different because it's a lot harder. I mean, they're obviously on the phone. There was no body language to read. And I was always pretty good about that because I did sales before my mission. I did door-to-door sales, um, selling law narration. And so I was comfortable with knocking doors. I loved knocking doors. So I was waiting for that. I was so excited. And then it just didn't come for a very long time. So it was a lot harder for me to sit still in a small apartment all day.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it would. That would have been really hard for me. I didn't. I had more of your stereotypical mission and third world country mission, like you were kind of saying that you were expecting it to be. But I obviously had things that I wasn't expecting that did happen. Yeah, that is interesting to kind of hear that side and some of the difficulties there. one thing about maybe phone lessons, and this is maybe not as applicable to the future missionaries, but I have never thought about it this way. But what was it like? I feel like if they're willing to get on the phone, or they're willing to get on a Zoom call, things like that, I feel like they might be even more interested than the people who I quote unquote convinced to let them in the door. Is that not true? Was that true? Like, what did you kind of experience with that? Like, did you get higher intent people when you were doing phone lessons or things like that?
I think it depends on the situation and the person. Especially during the height of COVID, I would argue probably not. Especially in the areas that I was in, it was a lot of older people who were just
Okay.
lonely, and so they wanted
Okay.
somebody to talk to and listen to. I mean, there was several people that we would have to reschedule lessons because they were just going off, especially in 2020. There was a lot of political warfare going on, and so they would just want to ramble about that.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, all right, maybe not today. We'll call you back another day. But we did also get a lot of people who were formerly taught by missionaries, and so they were a little bit like, oh yeah, you know what? That's something we were doing. It was cool. Just wasn't the right time. Now I'm not really doing much, so why not be the right time? So
Yeah, no, that's cool. And that's something actually I would love to talk about for the prospective missionaries that are going out. Like, that's, I think, that's one of the challenges is, at least in Mexico, and it sounds like it was at least an experience on the phone interviews, is having people that sometimes let you in because they're lonely, or because they want to have somebody to talk to, or they have, like, there was a lot of times that you have to learn how to filter the people who are actually interested versus the people who are just really nice, or the people who are letting you in. And I think that's something that I didn't expect as a missionary. Like, if they let me in the door, they're interested, and I'm going to work with them until they don't let me back in the door. And I kind of had to learn to, like, filter through people who were just being very polite, or people that were just being lonely and they really wanted something. And it doesn't mean I don't ever visit them or try and lift them up and help them, but finding the right balance there with people who are actually interested in the gospel.
absolutely, it's tough, and it was something that I really struggled with as well. Well, honestly, because I get attached to people real fast, and it's usually the people who like talking sports or like talking life that I get the most engaged with, and then I'm like, oh wait, this isn't the best use of my time right now. And especially in COVID, right, where we weren't teaching hardly anybody, we did keep everybody. So then once we did get busier, then I had to struggle with letting people go.
Yeah.
But it's true. It needs to happen. Some people just aren't ready at the moment, and your time is better spent somewhere else.
Yeah. And I talked about this on one of the previous episodes, but I like to harp on this because this was life-changing for me, was understanding that my job as a missionary wasn't to convince or to push somebody into it. It was learning that my job was to be a gatherer. Like, I was supposed to be finding people who were ready, who maybe still needed help. Not that I wasn't supposed to help them and persuade them and do all those different things that are, said through the scriptures and through all the preaching of the gospel, but I wasn't there to change somebody who wasn't willing to be changed, or there I was there to invite them. I mean, that is the missionary purpose, right? Is to invite others to come into Christ. And by helping them receive the restored gospel. And so finding that was difficult for me to, like, not feel like I was failing if they didn't choose it, but also not keep pushing to get them to decide that that's what they wanted to do, and being able to let go and be like, okay, they're clearly not ready. They're clearly not motivated. It's not my fault. It's not anything that I can do to change them. I need to wait for, and we talked about this, and I used an example of a red tomato. This was the area president that came down to my mission when I was a zone leader that just changed my whole world. And that was that if you go into a garden and you go to green tomatoes, there's nothing you can do to change a green tomato to be red. There's just nothing. You can't touch it more. You can't water it more. You can't, like, yes, it needs to be watered. Yes, it needs to be, but the sun and just time are the only things that can prepare it to be ready to be picked. And my job wasn't to go and change green tomatoes to red tomatoes. It was to find the red tomatoes and pick them and help them find their way into the gospel. And so that was something that really helped me learn that, okay, my job isn't to be the one changing people, it's to be the one finding people and helping them change themselves through Jesus Christ, obviously.
Man, I hate that analogy and love it at the same time. Because I don't know, I'm so stubborn. I think I can change a green tomato, Like, I got all the confidence in the world. But also, you're right. Like, it just doesn't happen. And I can think back to specific people that I did that with, and it didn't go anywhere, and maybe it does someday, but it's just it's hard to know that. It's
Yeah,
hard
it
to
is.
honestly, you kind of feel like you're giving up, but you're not. It's
Yeah.
just,
And one thing that the analogy kind of went, my mission president, after we took that analogy from the area president, my mission president kind of kept going on that in our future conferences and stuff like that. And one of the things that he said that I loved was like, if you actually love red tomatoes, like the worst thing you can do is spend time looking at a green tomato and trying to change it, because the red tomato will fall off the branch. It will wither away and die, because it only has a season that is ripe and ready. And so it's like, don't waste your time on green tomatoes. It doesn't mean you don't put them in the area book. It doesn't mean you don't try and help them, try and be there for them. But once you know that it's a green tomato and it isn't changing, it's time to go find the red tomato that's waiting for you. And that's, I mentioned this, and I don't try to be like a numbers guy with my mission, but my first year that I was focusing on green tomatoes, trying to change them to be red, I had 3 baptisms, and they weren't even really my baptisms. They were like, I got to the area and they got baptized right the week that I got there, and I didn't really do anything for it. And then the second year I had 25 baptisms. Again, not how many baptisms are you going to have, but the difference between the two of like, the second year I focused on people who actually wanted me rather than people that I wanted them to be convinced. And so I think for future missionaries preparing, like, think of the times and look out for the people who are waiting for you rather than trying to force somebody else to love that.
no, that's a good point. And not thinking back at it, like being a missionary, I overcomplicated it all the time. Because going back to what we were talking about earlier with the Book of Mormon introduction and with the free gift, that's really our job, is to just hand people the Book of Mormon, tell them what you experienced with it, why it's such a good thing, like try and, I don't know, coax them, I guess, in a way to at least just read the Book of Mormon. But once you do that, I mean, everything else is just nurturing and guiding. Like, get them in the book, let the product sell itself, right?
Yep, 100%. And it's hard. It's really hard to think that, because you do fall in love with these people. That's what you're there. Your sole purpose. You're leaving all these things at home. You're postponing school. You're maybe leaving a girlfriend. You're all these different things. And so you're like, anybody I meet, I just need to love them and take care of them and all these different things. But you just have to realize, like, your job is just to be the tool that gives them the tool, and then invites them and pushes them through those different things, like you said. Okay, let's jump into maybe some of your biggest challenges as a missionary. We've already talked about some of like the COVID things and maybe some of these other things, but like, what didn't you expect that was going to be a challenge that actually was a challenge? And then what do you wish you would have known before your mission that would have helped you through that challenge?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because there's a lot of things going on, right? It's a lot of change. It's a big swing from, going to your high school classes to going on a mission. And so the biggest challenges for me were, first, I think the first transfer is difficult for everybody. Just the adjustment period. And yeah, again, it was a killer for me being inside all the time, in a small apartment with 2 other guys. Sometimes it was the best thing. Sometimes it was the worst thing. But it's always hard. I think the beginning is always hard, but once you push through it, you give it, you start loving it. You start loving the work. You remember why you're there, and that gets you going. Another big challenge I had was the first time I was training. I loved the kid I was training. Good kid. He was a big baseball player. But I don't know, it was tough because neither one of us had dealt with any kind of mental anxiety before. And it just hit him like a truck. And it was weird because like our first transfer, it was all right. It was the second transfer that it really hit him. And he was just, missing home, missing his girlfriend, missing all these other things. We still were locked in a little bit. We were starting to get let out. Like, I think it was later that transfers when we got to knocking doors. But it was just tough for him. And I just had no idea what to do. Like, I would talk to his parents on the phone. I talked to the mission president all the time. He was talking to the mission president almost daily. Like, there was just some days where we didn't even do anything because he was just struggling so bad. And it was hard for me because I also wasn't doing great myself, because I actually, because I know I told you, Braiden, but I haven't told the people yet that I went home in the middle of my mission. Well, actually, towards the beginning of my mission, because I hurt my shoulder. And then I came back out. I had 2 transfers, or I had a transfer and a half, and now I'm training. And in this transfer, I break my elbow. I thought I was done. Like I had just got back to the mission from an injury, and now I break my elbow. I thought I was going home, and that was it. That was the end of my mission. Like I
And
had
I
just
haven't
wanted to
actually
both
heard
be there.
just so the listener know, I haven't heard the elbow part, so I'm really intrigued to see. I knew the shoulder part. So how did the elbow thing happen, and then keep going on your story?
Yeah, when the elbow thing happened, we were just playing. Me and my trainee, we were playing some basketball with some a new member and some of his friends, just at like the local college, and I just tripped, took a hard fall, sliding my feet on defense, and man, it hurt so bad, but I just thought it was a stinger. Like I thought, there's no way that just broke my arm. And I've had tons of injuries. I've torn my knees a couple times, but I've never broken anything, so I didn't know what it was like really. And so I got up, kept playing, but my arm just couldn't move. And so then started swelling real bad. Went to the doctor, or went to the hospital that night, and it was broken, sure enough. But so yeah, I wasn't doing well. My mission president even got upset with me the next day because I was in the hospital probably from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., but I still got up same time the next morning, went to my meeting, or we were teaching a less active member that morning. I went there, and my president calls me, and he's like, Elder, dude, you got to chill. Like, you need to slow down. You just got back. Stop hurting yourself. You need to take a break. And so I took it probably a little too far, and I was taking too many breaks, which was bad for him, my trainee, and that just got his anxiety worse. And so it was just a hard time for both of us, and that was a struggle. Honestly, the pain, whatever, I can get through that. I just felt so bad for this elder that I couldn't be a good enough trainer for him. I couldn't help him through his struggles like my trainers had helped me. So that was hard on me, but it was harder on him. So,
Yeah, and I think that's something that probably doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, is how hard it is to deal with companions. We always talk about that part. Like that part gets talked about all the time of like, hey, it's really hard. And we are usually talking about it from the bottom up, like you're the new missionary and you're dealing with a senior companion. And like how hard it is to deal with somebody else that's telling you what to do and all those different things. But I feel like we don't talk about how hard it is to be the senior companion. And I know that there's different missions handle senior and junior companionships different, but like being the one that maybe like the buck stops with you or you're the trainer and how to handle that. Like I look back and I was just telling you a story the other day of like how I handled my first trainee and how I hope that he isn't ruined for life by some of the things that I put him through just through thinking that I was doing the right thing, obviously. But then I had another companion that ended up going home 3 weeks in, and that stress, like not wanting to be the person who helped convince him to stay and helped him decide because I knew that it would be a good thing for him. And like that's hard. It's a lot of pressure to be a trainer and like have this brand new missionary and know that like he's probably going to shape the rest of his mission off of what he experienced in his first little bit of his mission. And that's a lot of pressure. And it's not fun. Honestly, I trained 4 times. So I ended up like, I loved it. Yeah. My mission president is like, okay, you get all the, all the new guys. So I had it was like 3.5 cause I had that one that went home early, but yeah, I trained a lot, but it was pressure. It was a lot of pressure of like, hey, I need to get these missionaries to know what it's like. And a lot of times 3 of my 4, which I know that they were English speaking in a Spanish country. So that's like the time where, like you said already, no matter where you're serving, what language you're learning, the first 2, 2 transfers is just so hard because you're getting adjusting. Already now you're going to speak another language and you don't know anything, and these guys are just like so depressed. They're trying to figure it out. Like that was the time that I was so depressed, and now you're the one actually training them and trying to figure out how do I keep them motivated, how do I keep them involved. It's really hard being the one like, hey, they don't speak any Spanish. I really want this investigator to understand what I'm saying and like believe in us. So sometimes you take over the lesson because you don't want them to just have to hear this like pre-recorded testimony in there, and then you have to keep that those balances there. And it was a lot of pressure, at least on me. And I think it sounds like it was for you too, of like that feeling there.
Yeah. And I wish I didn't I don't know if that sounds bad. I wish I didn't care so much because I think both probably me and you, our problem is that we took it to the extreme. Like we put too much pressure on ourselves. Like, yes, the trainer is probably the most influential companion you'll have your entire mission. But at the same time, you're not responsible for that kid going home 3 weeks early. Like, are there things you could have done to help him? Probably. But at the end of the day, that's his choice. He didn't want to stick it out, and that's something I'm sure he thinks about every day. And so it's like, yes, you do have influence, but also at the same time, he's got to work with the Spirit as well. And that's really what keeps you out. That's really what gets you going and really makes your mission.
Yeah, and I think that's for the listeners out there that are getting ready to go on their mission. I think that's great advice for them. Is yes, recognize that there should be some pressure there, and there is like you do like it is something that you're responsible for in some ways, but don't take it to maybe the extreme that you're naturally going to do of like blaming yourself for any negative or any of those different things, and recognize that it's going to be stressful, but believe in yourself and also believe, like we've said, it's not your job as a missionary to convince investigators. It's also not your job as a missionary to make your trainee a good missionary. You can help them, you can guide them, you can be a good example for them, but you can't force them to do anything. And that's really hard to learn as a 19, 20, 18, 19, 20-year-old, that you don't have control of other people. It's you wish you did, but you don't.
And also be a good trainee. It's so hard. Like, obviously know that your companion knows more than you do about a mission. Mission is not real life. It's so different. They know more than you, but they don't know everything either. So, have your own judgment, have your own spirit, but take their advice a lot of the times as well.
Yep. Be humble. Come out
Yes.
there, and sometimes you may have. I know of kids that they got on the mission, and their trainer was not motivated at all, and they were super motivated, and that can be so hard. And so, but also recognize that, like, try and be, even if you have a ton of gumption and you're ready to go, and they don't, like, be able to learn and not think that you know everything. And even if that companion isn't the greatest missionary in the whole world, because sometimes you're going to get those. Like, not every missionary is perfect. None of them are perfect, actually. But learn from what you can from them. Instead of just being mad that you got a certain companion, learn what you can. And that was something that was hard for me sometimes, because it was like I had my third companion. Love him to death now. But the first little bit, I was like, dude, you got to get your butt in gear. Let's get going. Like, this is really, really, really difficult. And now I look back, and by the end of the time, I was like, I love this guy. I learned so much from him. Yes, he hopefully learned some stuff from me, because we both kind of had completely opposite styles of working. But it was good for me, because I did get to learn things that I never would have learned if I would have just been with somebody that was just like me. And so be willing and humble enough to learn from your companions, even if they're not what you could consider the perfect missionary.
Well, good. You're a better man than me, because there are still some companions where I'm not sure what I was supposed to learn from them.
Well, I'm not saying that I learned a lot, but I tried.
All right, keep it honest here.
Okay, so let's kind of wrap up the mission side of things a little bit, and just maybe I know we talked about this a little bit, like what you wish you would have understood before your mission, or like what in preparation. Like, now we're talking to maybe the bulk of our listeners are going to be either parents of missionaries that are going out or missionaries that are going out this summer. Like, what would you say? Like, how should they prepare?
Man, that's a tough question even to answer after a mission, because it's just so different for everybody. But the biggest thing you can do is, build your own testimony first, right? You can't do anything without it. And so do whatever you have to do. Answer those hard questions. Go after it, whatever you're struggling with. Understand that it's okay to struggle with things. I still struggle with things, but I now know, because of my mission, how to study and figure out the answers that I need. So dive deep in those scriptures, dive deep in the preach my gospel. Those are, honestly, that's the biggest thing I learned from my mission, if I'm being completely honest with you, is how simple the gospel is. Like, the gospel can be so overwhelming with the Book of Mormon, the New and Old Testaments, the Pearl of Great Price, all of that stuff. But it really can be boiled down to those simple preach my gospel lessons. And if you can understand those, you can understand the basics of the gospel. That's all you really need. Like, it's good to have scriptures to back it up and to understand the life of Christ and how perfect of an example he was and what he can do for you in your life. But just getting familiar with that, understanding how simple the gospel is, and teach it simple, right? Because that's all you need. You don't want to overwhelm the people you're teaching out there. You don't want to overwhelm your companions. Just go out there and learn the simple basics that you need to have a testimony, And honestly, everything else you'll figure out along the way. Like, it's not going to be easy. No matter what I tell you today, it's not going to be easy. But you'll figure it out if you have that spirit, if you have that testimony.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's something that honestly good advice for missionaries that are getting ready to go, but honestly just for all members of the church and all people of all faiths. Honestly, like right now, I know especially like I'm the tail end of the millennials, and the millennial generation is having there's a lot of people inside of Utah anyway that are of my generation that are leaving the church or having faith crises and things like that. And honestly, the truth is learning that it's just simple, that there are simple things that are true is the most important thing. Like I talked about it towards the end of my mission. I had a little bit of a faith crisis. I got all these random information about Joseph Smith and all these random things that is readily available out there in the world. And the only thing that kept me going was my testimony in the plan of salvation originally at that time. And it was remembering the basics, remembering the core principles. And there are still times that things come up and things don't. And I think studying and finding the exterior things is fine as long as you remember the heart of it. If you start getting and making your focus on anything that's about somebody's life that was in the church or any of those other things isn't helpful unless you can look at, okay, I remember the core and I want to learn a little bit about this person or a little bit about this or understand the background of these things. But making sure you keep the main thing the main thing. And as long as you're looking at there, I think that's going to be the most helpful, and learning the core principles and honestly preach my gospel. Like the Book of Mormon teaches all of those things and it really points you back to Jesus and the core. But one thing I love about Preach My Gospel is it really is the basics. It just goes through. And if you focused on that, you could spend your whole life just studying Preach My Gospel and those resources and not diving into a single topic that's Kolob-ish. Like you don't have to. You
It's not
can
important.
focus on the basics. And that is a really, really good point that I think you will, if you can keep the main thing, and doubt your doubts, like when things come up, remember what you do believe in and then work that way back out, I think is the most beneficial thing you can do as a future missionary, but as a member of the church just in general.
Absolutely. Just lesson 2 and lesson 3. If you're a missionary, going to be a missionary, or just remember, like you said, go read the Preach My Gospel lessons on the plan of salvation and the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that is all you really need.
Yep. And I love that the church is leaning so heavy into Jesus. Not that we haven't always had Jesus at the center. It was the Church of Jesus Christ. But honestly, we even called ourselves Mormons for a long time. And the church is really making a push towards Jesus and making Jesus the center of everything.
As
And
it should be.
the planet, yeah, exactly. Like that was something that I didn't always focus on. I've talked about this on podcasts before. I dealt with scrupulosity, which is basically OCD of religious OCD. And so I was very much like earn my way into heaven. Like I don't think I consciously thought that, but it was like subconsciously, it was like, I needed to keep every commandment to a T. I need all these different things. And like, I'm such a different belief now is that it's all about Jesus. Yes, I still need to try and be obedient. I still need to develop myself to become what he wants me to become and become more like him. But I can only do it through him. I can't merit anything of myself. I need to do it through him and work through him. And honestly, like we said, the plan of salvation and the gospel of Jesus Christ are those two teachings that help us center on Jesus Christ. The plan of salvation is not possible without him. And that is what happens. And then the lesson 3, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ, is how. How does that happen? What do we need to do to qualify? And guess what it is? It's repentance. It's the doing the simple things and asking for Jesus' help. It isn't that we're actually going to do anything special besides continuing to just rely on him over and over and over.
Absolutely. Can't earn your way into heaven.
Nope. Only through the grace. So
only through the grace.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. I do want to talk about a couple things, and I want to give us both a little time to maybe shout out Odeon for a second. One thing I want to talk about, as the CEO of Odeon, like I'm very, very passionate about missionary work. We were obviously Modern Missionary for a long time. We did want to expand out of that market of just being missionary, but that in no way means we don't focus on missionary. Part of the podcast is supposed to remind all the listeners that like missionary is still a focus for us. It's still one of our biggest client bases, and we love missionary work. But one of our mantras at Odeon is look good, feel good, and do good. And we believe that if you look good and you feel good, that you're more likely to go and do good. That doesn't mean that your clothing is actually going to make you do better. But if you feel more confident, because first of all, the clothing looks good, you feel like it's presentable, what you want to, and it's comfortable, then you will have more confidence to go out and do the things that you need to do as a missionary. And guess what? The rigors of missionary work are hard on clothes. And so we focus really, really hard on making products that are durable, that are comfortable, and that look presentable. because how you look is the first message you deliver to people. The first thing they see is you, and that is the first message you deliver to that person that you're seeing on your mission. And so we are very passionate about giving you the experience and giving you the knowledge that we have about mission. So we focus a lot on that. We teach our employees of kind of like what different fabrics and materials are better for different climates that you're going on your mission, or what type, when you should use short sleeve shirts versus long sleeve shirts, like all those different things that maybe you don't get exact guidance in your booklet telling you where to go. And so we really focus on that. And the biggest thing that we do is like, we do that free gift, like we talked about earlier, is we give you a free pair of socks and a free shirt, because we believe in our stuff so much that we believe that if you come in and give us a try with those things, take it home, wash it, wear it, like you're going to love them enough that you will come back and get the rest. And so like, I invite all of you that are preparing, come get the free gift. There's no commitment there. We do not make you make a purchase. We just believe in our stuff enough that we want you to give it a try. And we promise you'll want to come back in because of how good it is.
Yeah. And hey, everything I'm wearing today, I got at Modern Missionary at the time. And I took it on my mission, and I left in 2020. It's 2025. I'm still wearing it. Still got the CTR clothing, the tie, the slacks, the belt, everything. So it's going to last you a long time. It's going to do what you need it to do throughout your mission. And it's going to treat you right. And that's, I mean, like we said, missions are hard. They're hard enough. We don't want you to worry about your clothes while you're out there. Okay? Take care of yourself. I mean, take care of them, right? But it's one less stress. If we can help you do that, then you are going to be that much better of a missionary.
Yep. And by the way, I did not tell Taylor to wear all of his stuff from his mission, but I love that he did it. I didn't even recognize it earlier. So there's proofs in the product right there. So
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Taylor, for jumping on. We're excited, and we are going to be back next week with a new episode, and we will let you guys know who it's going to be. We're going to launch that out there. There will be a few clips. Follow us on Instagram. It's just the Modern Missionary Podcast is our Instagram handle, and we'll be posting there and on collaborating with our Odeon posts. And then you can find us on all these different listening services, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Apple or
YouTube.
We'll be on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then we'll also be on Amazon Music. So thanks, everybody. Have a good one.